The Bank of Canada sits on its hands. Golf gets physical here in the Okanagan, and Greens get the boot from the debate. And then what drives you? Fear or hope? We got all that and a lot more here on the Really Big Show this morning. We're on every morning at 9 a.m. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. On the phone with me, Ian Burns in our nation's capital. Look at the Okanagan sky behind us, traffic flowing, beautiful blue sky, and the temperature is a nice 8 degrees here in the Okanagan right now. How's it looking in our nation's capital?
It's another very, very unpleasant day. I'm sorry to report. It's very grey, very gloomy. It's about sort of one, I think it's 0 or 1, but with wind chill, it's like -9 right now. So not
It's
a
kind of
happy
like
place.
it's kind of like the Canadian economy. Gloomy and minus. Gloomy and in a minus category. So the Bank of Canada sits on its hands. I called for them to cut, and I thought, and so did the CIBC call for them to cut, and no cut. They said they're going to just sit on their hands right now and watch what's happening. They talked a lot about a couple of scenarios that are going to play out, but for the most part, they did talk about all the negativity in the economy, but they're also worried about it getting a lot worse, and they decided to sit on their hands. I'm not sure why they decided to sit on their hands. That was one question from, I think, the Financial Times. Like, why did you choose to sit on your hands at this time instead of acting based on all the economic indicators that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, especially the inflation forecast, and they acknowledge that in the report. Because they publish a report with the decision every time, and they acknowledge that the carbon tax, which was removed at the beginning of this month, that means that I think I can't remember the exact words that they used, but they said it's going to be a real drag on inflation. It's going to bring it down.
Yeah.
They acknowledge that gas prices are lower, and there were various other sort of indicators that inflation is going to be pretty low. And then even in the worst case scenario of like an all-out trade war, the only thing that they said was inflation will be around 3%
Yeah.
in next year, 2026. So really, inflation doesn't seem to be all that much of a concern, but they've chosen to sort of not do anything. Yeah, it's quite a hard one to understand. But they did seek to emphasize. I mean, most of their report is about Donald Trump and the tariffs and the madness that's coming out of Washington D.C. So like
Yeah.
they've basically said everything is about that. They blamed the US for everything, but then they almost get a bit defensive at the end, and they say it's not the central bank's responsibility to get us through a trade war. There's nothing that we could really do about that, and our only responsibility or primary responsibility is price stability, so inflation. So like I mean, I guess they're thinking about inflation, but then that kind of contradicts their own inflation forecast, which is that it would be quite modest. So I don't really understand why they did this.
And the bigger one is that unemployment numbers are looking bad and going to look worse because they're saying a lot of companies are talking about layoffs, and that's been going on for a while. This is even prior to the Trump tariffs. And disinvestment from Canada, investment fleeing Canada. They talked about that quite a bit. So unless they kind of figure out a way to get investment going in Canada, and a lot of the housing markets in Canada, it's kind of like the tale of two cities going on right now in Canada for real estate. Some markets, like Toronto right now, like the condo market is collapsing. And we're going to show you this graph here right now. If we look at this, this is the new condo apartment sales in Toronto. I mean, just collapsing to, plummeted 88% below the 10-year average with only 533 units sold, the lowest since 1995. So lots of people have been hearing from lots of people that aren't completing sales as well. And I say that numbers, I had a live stream with a realtor here saying that, that number could be as high as 30% of people not completing on, like those pre-builds. Because I'm sure you've seen all those cranes go up there. Cranes are coming down, and that's even here in the Okanagan here. Cranes are coming down for units that are to be sold, but they're not going back up.
Yeah, well, I mean that reflects a sort of more general story, which is consumer confidence in Canada, which is very low right now, or not very high anyway, put it that way, and also business confidence. They're both not looking healthy, which is another reason, I suppose, that people thought, the rates would come down to try and stoke activity. But Alas, no.
Yeah. I think the unsold condominium inventory is around almost 24,000, increasing 6% from a year ago, and 58% higher than the 10-year average. So not good in that Toronto market there. But again, interest rates really holding back a lot of people, and the economy in general. People scared to invest right now,
Well,
especially.
especially I think. I mean, the condo market in Toronto is, it's a disgrace to mankind. The UN should investigate that because you're paying like close to $1 million for a one-bedroom garbage apartment. I mean,
Yeah.
I just feel like when there's uncertainty in the economy, in the Canadian economy and the world economy, people are just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to debase myself and spend that much money on an apartment, on a tiny, claustrophobic living space in Toronto.
Yeah, I think we.
So I feel like the markets are just overheated, but loads of people that bought during the heyday of the pandemic, they're just not willing to sell. And also people even who bought in the 90s or the 80s or whatever for pennies, they saw what happened during COVID. They saw the kind of insane prices that people were selling property for, and now they don't want to sell their property for what it's actually worth. So there's a kind of, there's kind of a stalemate there.
And then this thing is going to go across the world. And this happened right here in our own backyard. This happened at the Two Eagles golf course here in West Kelowna. This, golf etiquette got out of hand. We're going to play this clip here. Can you go full screen on that, Rommel?
Monday night fucking golf. You're gonna hit me. You get one shot and then watch what happens. Seriously, buddy, do it. It's Monday night fucking golf. You in a rush where you gotta be? You hit up our ass all day. Don't fucking you push me. You pushed me first. You got one back. You got one back. Oh, you wanna push me? Hey, come on, man. Bring it on. Bring it on, buddy.
This is retarded.
Seriously, come on, man. Larry.
You can step in, Justin. You can. Justin, you can help.
Stop it!
No, guys.
Oh, you wanna go? Fucking crazy! Look at this bitch!
There you go. I don't think that's. I don't want to play golf like that. Guy ended up with a broken jaw. The story's on Kelowna now. The guy ended up with a broken jaw. The police are investigating. RCMP are investigating the whole thing, and I guess this had to do with them trying to play through. So tempers got heated.
Well, I mean, that fella that took a beating, the video just kind of goes on and on, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
the most interesting part for me, anyway, is that he accepts that he's defeated. It's almost like watching, the Discovery Channel or something. He just kind of like a defeated lion that's challenged the master lion, and then he just kind of like walks away. Then he drives away, doesn't he?
I think like in that he almost got knocked out in that final blow there when he tried to do the backhand, and then that missed, and then that opened him wide open for that other thing. A lot of people that think they can fight shouldn't fight people that know how to fight. Obviously, the guy in the blue shirt was more capable of the fisticuffs than the rest of them. These are all older people. This wasn't a young guy beating up on an old guy. So,
yeah.
But anyway,
that guy in the blue would have got absolutely slapped by like a proper fit person that knew how to fight. But he obviously knew, as you say, he clearly knew at least how to throw a punch and how to get into a defensive stance. Whereas the other guy didn't. And not only did he not know, but he also didn't believe in himself. As soon as he pushed him, he was like basically trying to back off. And it was like, okay, that's not the right way to go into a fight.
Just keep the tempers down and just play golf. Golf's supposed to be for relaxing. These guys are going to be famous all over the internet. This is going to be everywhere. This is like, we got it because it's a local story. but I can guarantee this thing is going to go everywhere.
Yeah, as one of our reporters said last night, I think, Meg, she said it's the most exercise anyone's ever got on a golf course in their lives. So there you go.
Lots of people complain that golf isn't enough of a physical contact or contact sport. There you go.
But yeah, don't have fights, lads. Come on, be civilized. That's our final word, I think.
But I think we've got to this point where instead of just like just like maybe like you don't need to get angry at a golf course. Like just relax. You're supposed to go there to relax, not to pick a fight and then start punching each other. Like holy cow, where are we at here? And then that's the generation that's supposed to set the example for the young people. Doesn't look very good.
That's the generation that's supposed to be very sensibly voting for Mark Carney.
There you go.
Look what they're doing. That's not very sensible, is it?
No, it's not very sensible at all. Very selfish and angry, if I was to pick a few words for that. There you go. Let's kick it into the election, though. And only a couple of weeks ago, too. And here we are, election 2025, getting ready for the big debate. And the Greens get the boot from the election debates.
Yeah, and that's because there were certain criteria that you needed to meet in order to, in order to be present. And the people that have convened these debates say that the Greens intentionally removed candidates from around Canada because, I mean, obviously the Greens know that they're not going to win. I mean, they might not even win one seat.
Wow.
So to put in 90% of the 343 ridings, that's like quite a strain on the resources of the Green Party. So obviously they're not in all of those ridings. And then the debate organisers have said, all right then, you're not going to take part. But I mean, they left it a bit late, didn't they? And that's really upset the Greens, who have said that it's like an undemocratic decision and all the rest of it. They're very unhappy.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree on one side there that they don't run in enough ridings, and then there's also rumors out there saying that they're not running in all the other ridings. They drop candidates because they're trying to help the Liberals win, which may or may not. I mean, Elizabeth May did say that we need to run together. That was in or out of her own mouth. But the Bloc doesn't run a full slate across Canada either, though.
I think there was another there are other measurements, other kind of criteria that you can meet, and based on on your polling, your average poll rating is above something like,
and maybe number of seats too,
4% or something. Yeah, and obviously that you need to have at least one member of parliament. I think so. The Bloc met those two criteria. But even if they didn't, the Bloc would be allowed anyway because the Bloc are from Quebec, and if you're from Quebec, then there's always an asterisk.
But I mean, the Green,
there's always an asterisk that says Quebec doesn't have to pay attention to that rule.
The Greens not the only party kicked out. The PPC is not there as well.
Yeah, well, they don't really meet any of the criteria, the PPC. So, I mean, they're an odd little fringe party. I mean, are they even a party? They're almost like a pressure group, aren't they? I don't really. I'm not surprised that they weren't invited, but I'm not sure what difference this is going to make for the debate. I mean, I imagine that this is bad news for the Conservatives, but then again, it might not have been. It's a hard one because, as you said, they're actually quite friendly with each other, aren't they? The Liberals and the Greens at times. So I feel like the Greens, they might have just done the surreal thing, which we're going to see. We're going to see this in the debate, I reckon, where Jagmeet Singh, who desperately needs to get his voters back from the Liberal Party, I imagine Jagmeet Singh is still going to attack the Tories because that's just in his DNA, isn't it? So I feel like maybe the Greens would have done that as well, laid into the Tories, which is like the forever enemy that must be completely destroyed. But I don't know. I mean, you'd think that he would have put pressure on Carney from the left, so to speak. But I don't know. As well, like it would have been a bit of a distraction, wouldn't it? I don't know if you can remember the debates, the BC debates, not that long ago. They were extremely boring, so I wouldn't blame you for forgetting them. But it just seemed to me, it was John Rustad, David Eby, and then Sonia Furstenau of the Greens. And it was just like, I was watching it, I was just kind of like, why are you even here, Sonia? Like, you're a completely fringe party. You're just getting in the way, really, and it can feel like that. So I suppose in this scenario, at least, there's one fewer sort of body there to get in the way and distract from the real debate.
Pierre Poilievre says he sees CBC as a local nonprofit. This is a Hollywood Blacklock story there. So he confirmed Conservatives will defund the English portion language services if elected in April 28th. He's not doing away with the CBC. That's where people kind of get it wrong. He says he will defund the Crown broadcaster and said they need to rely on their own advertising income, subscription fees, and viewer donations, kind of like PBS back in the day. He said he's going to defund the English-speaking portion of the CBC and let Canadians enjoy it as a nonprofit, self-funded organization. And that's what he said all along. He said that the government funding will end for the English-speaking portion of the CBC. The network currently is about $1.4 billion of a parliamentary grant, and said that that's not enough. And Mark Carney promised them more. Catherine Tate last December told the CBC could use millions more, and that's what Pascal St. Onge said. Well, hey, we can do better now. We can double your budget. As she was walking out the door with Justin Trudeau. I've done stories and interviews with Holly Doan, and she said, if we don't repeal, Bill C-18, we're going to have really just state-funded media, and basically a federal arm of the government will be what our media landscape will look like. We've done so much on Bill C-18. Bill C-18 needs to be repealed, and media needs to be able to operate freely without government interference. That's my opinion on it without the CBC. Not on CBC. I think CBC is a public broadcaster, but I'm just saying media in general needs to be not interfered with by the government. Media should be left to its to innovate, to do whatever it can to survive, and not be begging for crumbs from the government. The CBC is a different beast altogether. CBC is a public broadcaster, and whether that funding, I think if the funding is to continue for CBC, it needs to be done by a nonpartisan group, not by one party. Like, we can't have one party saying we're going to fund CBC and one party saying they're going to defund CBC. CBC should not be at the change in government. We should decide what we're going to do with CBC and do it properly, and not have them worried about who's going to be in power, because we've seen that, the reporters obviously are fighting for their jobs, and then so that slants media, and we only really have one major national broadcaster. CTV and CBC almost seem to do the same thing all the time.
And obviously, as well, there's plenty of taxpayers' money available for CTV as well, in the form of these various subsidies. But the thing that I find quite outrageous here is what Blacklocks have focused on as well, which is the executive bonuses last year of $15 million just to the executives.
While they laid off people.
What do you want? Do you want to have this supposedly virtuous public sector broadcaster, where they do it for the principle and they do it because they love it, or do you want to work for a kind of intense private commercial company where they chase after profit increases so that they can have bigger bonuses and all the rest of it? It's like, make your mind up. You can't have both. But CBC has had both. Why? Why in God's name? Has anybody ever explained why executives at the CBC deserve $15 million on top of their salaries that they already get? What have they achieved? What has anybody at CBC achieved in 20 years? And what's the answer to that question? Because I really don't understand that.
And the sadness is they laid off at the same time they took those outrageous bonuses. And Marco Mendicino, the new Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, called the CBC a pillar of democracy. I would say that's one phrase that guy does not understand. And he says that pillar of democracy should not be criticized. Well, if it's taking government money, it should always be criticized. Because why wouldn't we criticize it? If it's taking our money, taxpayer money, it definitely needs to be criticized. Because why couldn't we criticize it? But Mendicino thinks that it's too important that we recognize and that it's beyond criticism. That's ridiculous.
But we see this all the time, don't we? Where like extremely powerful people and institutions in recent years have been trying to persuade us that they're out of bounds. You can't touch them. You can't talk about them. We had that. I mean, just to localize it quickly off the top of my head, we had that with Bonnie Henry, didn't we, in British Columbia during the pandemic? Where it's like this woman and her organization, her institution, had immense power, almost like impossible to comprehend how powerful she was during the pandemic. And yet at the same time, it was completely it's completely unacceptable to criticize her. And we were repeatedly told that, like, oh, you can't, this is, Dr. Bonnie Henry, like, come on, shut up. She's the expert. It's kind of like, what is going on? Why are we kind of heading into this very dark era, it seems to me, where the most powerful people in society are beyond criticism? Is that healthy? It's certainly not democratic anyway.
So what Mendocino is asking for here is basically absolute power. So you're not allowed to criticize them. Absolute power. What kind of democracy grants absolute power to anybody? Absolute power is granted to kings that are next to God.
I think I have an answer for you. The Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. That would be a democracy that does that.
There you go. But that's what I mean. He's asking for absolute power, absent of any type of criticism. These people are the threat to democracy. Marco Mendocino is now the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, asking for absolute power for the CBC. When would we ever give that to anybody in a real democracy? When? Tell me when. And why would we do that?
It's completely bananas. Yeah, it's completely nuts. And there's always some sort of crisis to justify it. But as we've mentioned before, back in the day, when democracies were a little bit healthier, like, for example, during the Second World War, Winston Churchill in Britain there was criticised by many people. He was open to criticism, despite the reality at that time, as they understood it, the British people, that they might be extinguished as a nation within months. Even while that was happening, they still had space to criticize the leader of the country. And I just think that's a democracy. That's what a democracy looks like. Yeah. Not this, where we're not really in a crisis that even comes close to what the British were in 1940. And yet we're being told repeatedly that we just can't criticize certain people and certain institutions.
I mean, it really surprised me when Prime Minister Carney appointed Mendocino, because he was basically booted out of Trudeau's government for like abuse of power and privilege and caught lying several times. And here he is, Chief of Staff.
Mendacious Mendocino, you might say, if you are into your alliteration.
There you go. And then this hour is 22 minutes. Poke some fun at Mark Carney. We're going to play this clip here.
Let's go. Let's go.
Oh, Mr. Prime Minister. All right. Excellent.
Mike Myers. But you live in the States. You don't live in Canada.
Well, neither do you until recently.
Touché. That's French for something. I don't do French. Do you remember Mr. Dressup?
The children's show on CBC? Yeah, way.
Bud the...
Spud. These are some pretty old references. How long have you been out of Canada?
Doesn't matter. Who sang Snowbird?
Anne Murray. Swing! So you've no current references at all?
This Indigenous songwriter co-wrote Up Where We Belong.
Buffy St. Marie? Wow, you really have been out of the country a long time. Mr. Prime Minister, can I ask you a question?
Is it about my blind trust?
No.
Then fire away.
Do you know who Drake is?
Duh. The wheelchair guy from Degrassi.
How many territories are there?
2. Yukon and the Northwest Territories.
A Nunavut?
None of what?
It's a territory created in 1999.
No way.
Way? But you knew that, right?
Pass.
Mr. Prime Minister, will there always be a Canada?
There will always be a Canada.
And will you stay on as party leader if you lose the election?
Let's watch the game. Elbows up.
All right, elbows up. Good hustle. Come on, let's go.
Good puck passing.
Puck passing.
There you go. A little bit of comedy for you in the morning.
That was quite a good Mike Myers And it sort of made me realize what I subconsciously realized during the real version of that, which was that Mike Myers kind of was doing a bit of a Wayne's World sort of
Yeah.
character, the way he was speaking. He was kind of doing that. Like he caught it perfectly, didn't he? Where he's like, "You mean the CBC character?" It's like, that's pretty good.
There you go. And Holly Doan, this is a tweet that she put out. Carney has steadfastly avoided public contact with the Canadian Jewish community, the fourth largest in the world. So, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu scolded Carney on X just a while ago. And it seems to be avoiding his comment. And then he had that one misstep there, too, which he says he didn't hear, which, like most people clearly heard it when somebody shouted out about the genocide going on in Gaza. And he said, I can't remember the exact words he said, "I hear you," or "I know," or something like that.
Yeah, I think he said, "I know," and that's why we've got an arms embargo.
Correct. Yeah, that's what it was.
But then afterwards, he said, "Oh, I didn't hear that thing. Oh, my lord, I didn't hear any such thing. I just heard the word Gaza." It's like, I didn't hear the word Gaza. He said Palestine, not Gaza.
So why did he say, "I know"? That's why we have an arms embargo. Do you know what I mean?
It was a funny one, but that kind of highlights a problem with the Liberal Party because, it is not a coincidence that the person that lives down the street from me replaced their lawn sign that said "Stop the Genocide in Gaza" with an "Elect the Liberal Party" placard. I mean, that's not a coincidence, obviously, that the Liberal Party has, as part of their constituency, a lot of people who are very anti-Israel or pro-Palestine, however you want to look at it. And they've had some trouble with that recently, as we're all aware. I mean, Melanie Joly not long ago was accosted by some hooligan in the street about Palestine, about Gaza, whatever. It's happening quite a lot, and it's happening in the Democratic Party in the US, the Labour Party in England. It's happening all over the place where the party elites generally have an official line, which is to be quite sort of friendly to Israel, sort of just about anyway, or like decent towards Israel. And then also to sort of say some nonsense about a two-state solution, which is what Carney said, something that's just completely impossible, as everybody with even a tiny bit of knowledge of Israel-Palestine is aware. But they're in this position where they have to appeal really to two different groups, and they try, and they often don't succeed. And this is Carney straight away walked right into the trap, didn't he? And now he's had his first encounter with that. But it won't be the last. I think he's going to have many, many more trip ups on this particular issue.
And the NDP continue to bring out the cringe ads, and this one here by Nalia. You got to watch this one.
You touch me one more time, I'll show you who I am. I'm your NDP candidate for Don Valley North, who is going to be your voice, your family's voice, and your future, and I'm going to work for you here in Don Valley North.
You got to get that anger out there, right? Maybe she should be the golf marshal. If she doesn't win her riding, she could probably apply to be a golf marshal.
Is that not the riding that's had all the trouble with a liberal Chinese fella who was, who had to step down? I believe it might be.
But I've seen a few of these now. This, it seems like anger is how they fire up their base, and we're going to talk about that because this election really seems to be hinged on, especially for the Liberals, all about one topic, and it's about fear. And there's a lot of people accusing, even the Toronto Sun had this piece out here say, CBC reporter traveled to the White House there and asked the question, is Donald Trump still want Canada to be the 51st state to get it back in the news, they accuse her of. That's the next slide there, Rommel. We're not going to play the clip because it's seen it so many times. But that was brought back out because it seems like the Liberal campaign seems to be running on fear. I also interviewed a Liberal candidate yesterday, and they said the number one issue is the fear of Trump. But I think they're making it the fear of Trump.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think you have to have a willing electorate. You can't just tell the electorate what to prioritize. And I think there obviously is a large chunk of people in Canada that for whom that is the number one issue. I mean, we're gonna talk about it next, aren't we? The difference between conservative and liberal leaning voters. But it's definitely true, and I think it does seem to be the older demographic. So that would sort of explain why the CBC is barking up that tree, because I imagine that their viewership is a hell of a lot older than.
Yeah, I think their viewership is definitely in on that as well, and they're playing into that as well. And then we do have this other tweet here. It says 3/4 of the conservative votes said their emotion guiding them is primarily hope for a better future, to raise a family. But in contrast, 6 in 10 liberals say they're motivated primarily by fear of what future holds for Canada. And so that it's kind of a stark contrast there. And then there's this poll here that shows that conservative voters typically are voting for a better future, and very little are affected by fear. When that's kind of flipped, when it looks at liberal voters, who are mostly motivated by the fear of Trump. And I asked this question of the Liberal candidate that was here yesterday. Like this fear of Trump doesn't last very long. I mean, at some point it goes away. So what are we left with at the end of the day if that's all we're voting on? Because we should be discussing the platform for both parties and what the future holds for Canada, as opposed to just Trump, because Trump is an outside influence. And when you play on fear, just think of this: when you play on fear, you give in to the other side instead of finding a future where you don't have to deal with the fear anymore. That's what we need to get to, is where we're not dealing with the fear anymore. We need to talk about a Canada that doesn't have to be so reliant on one customer, and that was a bad mistake to begin with. In any business you run, if you're running a business and you're so reliant on one customer, you failed in not diversifying your business. And Canada has failed at that. Like, we had opportunities to build pipelines to the west and to the east, and we refused them. And then we rely, again, our biggest export, bar none, is our energy. And it all goes to the US. And we've been selling Western Canadian Select at a discount forever. So just think, if we didn't have to sell it at a discount, how much we could pay for. It's just crazy. Like, that's the real question. We're willingly putting ourselves subject to the whims of anybody. And I mean, if it's not Trump this time, it could be whoever next time. And we did see that with the Biden administration as well. They were protective over the United States. We've had this softwood lumber thing forever.
Yeah, and we're also being tariffed by the Chinese, another major market for our products, although we don't hear much about that because it's not affecting the vote-rich provinces of Quebec and Ontario. But we are also being, we're being hit by the Chinese in a pretty big way. But I think this poll is from the National Post. I think it's very interesting because it kind of highlights something that I mentioned to you the other day, which is that there almost seems to have been an inversion, a left-right inversion, where the Liberals almost seem more conservative and the Conservatives are more progressive in a sense, or what you would traditionally consider left-wing. Because if you had to chip away at all of the nonsense and all of the verbiage, what is the left traditionally? What does it traditionally represent? It represents people that want a better future. They want things to change in the future. They want a new settlement, a new arrangement. And then if you look at this poll, it's the Conservative voters who are traditionally left-wing in that sense. And then you look at the Liberals and you think, okay, what a sort of conservative or somebody on the right, what's their primary motivation? And it's fear of change. They don't want things to change. They're scared about the present being lost because they want to hold on to it because it's something that they're happy with. And then look at the Liberals. Number one concern, fear of Trump. I just think this is very interesting. I think when you look at the demographics of the voter base, it makes sense because the sort of younger or youngish majority, or a majority of the youngish people in Canada are Conservative voters. The ones with young kids, the ones who want a house, want to have kids or whatever. Whereas for the Liberals, they've now all of a sudden become the old people's party, the pensioners' party. And traditionally that divide, all over the world has been reflected in the right-left dichotomy. And you've had older people that tend to be more conservative and younger people tend to be more liberal. But it's completely flipped. And we saw the same thing in the US, where loads of young people, especially young males, backed Donald Trump. Whereas historically, that was like madness. Imagine trying to explain that to somebody like 25 years ago or something. Like young people are going to vote for the right-wing party. It didn't used to happen. But I think, we have to get used to it. Like, this is the new reality where the Tories are left and the Liberal are right.
Yeah, and I think that Jagmeet Singh's party, what the NDP used to be, definitely should be more aligned with the Conservatives these days. Because if you look at the housing platforms, the housing platform of the Conservatives is more about the taxpayer and gives more to the taxpayer, whereas the Liberal platform is all about the corporate. It's $35 billion in financing for corporations, really, and not much for the taxpayer in general. So,
but even think about that, translate that into age groups. Who tends to have the most investments? So in other words, what happens when a corporation is given money? It boosts the value of that corporation. Who tends to have shares in corporations? Older people, pensioners. Whereas, do they pay much in taxes? Not really, because you get lifted out of all kinds of taxes once you retire. Whereas it's young people that are desperate for tax cuts. So again, it is a kind of young v old battle that we're seeing here.
And then we got this here. Somebody put this out here just to show these ties to the Eurasia Group, and they seem to be pretty strong, actually. The Eurasia Group, Mark Carney's wife works there. Diana Fox Carney works there, and Evan Solomon. He was the journalist that was fired from CBC for selling art while he was working at CBC. And guess who he sold the art to? Mark Carney. So he was fired from CBC for brokering sales of paintings belonging to an art collector to Jim Balassi and Mark Carney. And now he's running as a federal Liberal. And Gerald Butts also, he also worked he got a job, when he got fired from CBC, he got a job at Eurasia Group. And then Gerald Butts also, when he was made the fall guy by Justin Trudeau for the SNC's Lavalin scandal, got a job at Eurasia Group. And now, they're all the chickens are back. Hey, Gerald Butts is running Carney's campaign. Evan Solomon is running as a candidate. And Diana Fox Carney is walking through the forest with Mark.
That's why it's a good idea to have friends, isn't it? That's the value of friends and networks.
And they're selling paintings. Like, who doesn't want to buy painting? Like art. We saw that in the United States, didn't we, with Hunter Biden? He was an art dealer as well.
Yeah, the great thing about art is that its value is entirely subjective. So you can sell it for whatever somebody else is willing to pay for it. And the taxman cannot dispute that.
Yeah, no, art is a great way to transfer money between people. It is one of the best ways to do it. Like, I think Hunter Biden was selling his paintings for astronomical amounts of money when his father was in power. And he can't sell them now, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think, whatever this is in the Canadian space, we will reserve our judgment. But in the United States with Hunter Biden, there is absolutely no question that was enormous levels of corruption, completely brazen, dirty, filthy corruption. And also, like, the money he was getting to advise a Ukrainian oil company, as if he knew the first thing about oil or the first thing about anything on this earth. But yeah, there you go. I mean,
so
that's how they do corruption in the United States.
Here's the positive lesson in all this, I guess. No matter what you do, your network will always take care of you. How's that?
Yeah, and this kind of thing there's many examples of this throughout history, that, your team will have your back. And this is kind of, it's fundamentally undemocratic, isn't it? Anti-democratic, I would say. It's an attempt to create a kind of network of cronies and, like a nepotistic network to look after your tribe, basically. And
so Mark Carney basically
undermines the idea of our democracy.
you could look at it and you say Mark Carney is actually very generous, and he's wiped away the slate for all these people. So you have a disgraced journalist that he was involved with, actually played a role in getting him disgraced by being part of that art deal. He's now running as a Liberal candidate. Nobody seems to want to talk about it. And then Gerald Butts, who was the disgraced person in the SNC Lavalin case, he's back front and center. And there you go. And they all got jobs in the meantime. They got to be their time out with the Eurasia Group at the same time. I don't know who the other guy is in that picture there, but
it's the bench, isn't it? When you're off the field, you get to sit on the bench at the Eurasia Group.
And you're taken care of while you're
back in.
Yeah. So like you just have to wait long enough, I guess. So there you go. A China daily editorial said that tells U.S. stop whining and recognize that it's living beyond its means. America needs to stop whining and recognize they've been living beyond their means for decades, that Chinese Communist Party's media mouthpiece said in an editorial. There you go.
I mean, there's undoubtedly truth to that, isn't there?
I mean, the Americans are fortunate that they get to export their inflation to other nations because of the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is the currency of exchange in the world. And with that power comes the ability to export your inflation to other parts of the world.
But they also, because they came in, decided finally, or were forced finally to come into the Second World War later than the main players of that war. Ever since they did that and, steamrolled the world with their navy and military, they've also really sort of, at least in the sort of free world, as we call it, the capitalist world, they've controlled all of the international institutions and they've written every single rule to benefit themselves. I mean, this is why, when Trump first dropped this nonsense, I couldn't get over how brazen he was to come out and say this. The whole global system is built by America for America. And yet people like Trump and J.D. Vance come out and complain about it. It's just completely hilarious. I mean, it's so stupid what they're doing that I find myself agreeing with the Chinese Communist Party. Not something that I do very often, but they're completely right here. They are living way beyond their means, the Americans. But I would also say, sadly, so are we. We are really living beyond our means too. The amount of debt that we have in Canada is just sickening. It's just ridiculous. On top of which, of course, we rely on the United States for defense. So we have quite a huge chunk of our budget that we can spend on other things because we don't have a military. Yeah,
there's a couple of Chinese viral ads going out there, like direct from their suppliers, saying like, I don't want to name the brands. Why are you buying from these big famous brands? We sell it to them for like $5 and they sell it to you for $100. Why don't you cut out the middleman, come direct?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of thing's been going on for so long, hasn't it? And it's this is, and that's the part of Trump's tantrum that actually makes sense and has a grounding in reality, which is that this system is unhealthy and it's unnatural and it hasn't really made our lives all that much better. Just to have cheaper sort of tack consumables, it hasn't necessarily made our lives better.
Well,
it's more complicated, isn't it?
The biggest consumer in the world is the United States consumer, and that's what everybody wants. That they feed the machine. So a lot of those other countries like India, China, Thailand, all those places just really exist to feed that consumer.
Absolutely, and the Europeans as well, kind of to a lesser extent, but the Europeans now have become increasingly impoverished, haven't they? And they're not like the Americans. They don't have control of the global institutions, so they can't dictate things to make it work for them. They don't have the reserve currency. They don't have the world's biggest military. So they're kind of, the Europeans are learning now that it's not a guarantee. And countries, third world countries around the world won't prop up your living standards forever. They'll eventually revolt, and they'll organize things like BRICS to try and resist your power.
The number of cross-border travelers going from Canada to the U.S. dropped by nearly 900,000 in March compared to the same month last year. So that is huge with the amount of people not crossing the U.S. And a lot of that has to do with either the weak dollar, which is one, and then two, the stuff we're seeing on the news of people getting hassled for crossing too. And I think, and and a part of that is just people saying that you shouldn't go across there to support Canada. But then you see our fearless leaders supporting many American institutions like Meta and that the Liberals spending millions of dollars with Meta, while they scream that you should be supporting Canada. Not so much.
Indeed. I mean, even Mark Carney with his absolutely bizarre, inexplicable decision to put his daughter at the podium when he won the Liberal leadership election. And she delivered a speech for some mysterious reason. I still can't understand why he decided to do that. But she was, I think she mentioned, or it was mentioned beforehand, that she's attending Harvard University. So what does it cost to get a degree from Harvard? Like a few $100,000 US or something like that. So there's another institution that's being patronized by the Liberals, or our elite.
There you go. And here's one that you can take from your homeland, UK Supreme Court, rules on the legal definition of a woman.
Yeah, it's yet another day and another news story, which basically amounts to sky is blue experts rule. But there you go. I mean, this is obviously it's a bit more complicated. A lot of people on the fringes of society in Britain and also elsewhere in the West have been trying to make it possible to obtain an official document that declares your sex to be the one other than what you were born into, if I can phrase it like that. And that obviously has loads of actually important consequences. If you're born a man and you get one of these documents to say that you're a woman, then you can obviously do things like take part in female sports. You can go into female, changing rooms, bathrooms, all the rest of it. Refuges, So it's caused a hell of a lot of controversy, as we're all aware. And then they took it to the Supreme Court in Britain, and the Supreme Court has ruled that the concept of sex is binary. A person is either a woman or a man, and that's decided based on your sex at birth. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's pretty clear, I think. I'm not sure if we could make that any clearer.
And again, in the UK, you're going to love this one. Based on your income, you could pay more for electricity.
Well, the reason I put that in there is we can't see it in the headline here, but the rationale behind this is we have to figure out a way to pay for net zero, basically. We have to figure out a way to pay for making the electric grid completely clean, as they put it, by 2030, which is an extremely controversial policy right now. It's been forced through by the Labour Party in England. And I thought the reason this is relevant to Canadians is that Mark Carney, evidently, he's got so many connections to Britain that we don't have time to list them, but he's very well connected to Britain, including through nationality, I believe. I don't think he's got rid of that yet. But Mark Carney speaks very, very fondly of the United Kingdom. We've heard him say that a number of times. He talks about Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and he talks about the meetings that he's had with him and how he wants to diversify towards the UK. And he often says as well, like, that's the reason we need to be a green superpower, so that we can do business with the likes of the UK. And I just thought I would point out, like, Britain is considerably further ahead than Canada in terms of implementing this ideology, the net zero ideology. And this is the kind of thing, this is just one example, but this is the kind of thing that they're seeing now in Britain, where it's being openly spoken about that, I assume based on your income, based on your taxes, the taxes that you pay or something, that you might have to, your electricity will become more expensive because of that. This is insane, isn't it? Surely I'm not the only one that thinks that.
So this goes against, in my mind, goes against capitalism, because it's just basically saying they're trying to figure out everything they can do, because we have a progressive tax system. Now they're saying they're going to have a progressive payment system, so they're going to come down to where you go to buy the soda pop at the store, and based on your income level, they're going to decide whether or not you pay more for that soda pop or less for that soda pop. I don't know.
Yeah, what about trains? Like, what if you go and fill your, if you're immoral enough to have a combustion engine vehicle, you go and fill your gas up, and it's like, excuse me, sir, what's your annual salary? Oh, it's £90,000. Okay, well, this is going to be more expensive gas for you. It's like, no, I don't really want to. I don't really want to live in that world.
Quite
But it's
the
also, it's just another way. It's just another way to like tax people as well, isn't it? And it's another way to control people, and it's a little bit frightening. I think that prospect.
Yeah. There you go. Let's move on to markets. Markets, again, you know, they're starting to lose some of that volatility. So maybe we're seeing the bottom in the markets now. As you know, because as we've seen that huge volatility. Right now, they're down about 265 points. Right now, when I put that chart up, it was a little bit higher. But again, the markets are moving. The volatility is, we're starting to see a drop in the volatility for sure. The swings are getting smaller and smaller, which means that it's looking for direction. Gold.
Well, it's kind of on a hair trigger, though, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
Trump is suspended. I mean, it's so dumb. It's so confusing and weird, and it's like they obviously haven't planned it at all. But like Trump has all of these things ready to go at the push of a button, effectively, doesn't he? So the next time he has a meltdown, you know, the next time we go on Truth Social and he's said something insane, that'll be the next round of market volatility, won't it?
I would say so. And the reason I'm rubbing my nose a lot is I'm kind of recovering from a cold. I actually feel pretty good today, but my nose definitely does not want to stop running or itching. So there you go. Colds are so much fun. Gold. Gold having a great day. Another great day for gold. And it looks like, you know, it just wants to go up. Up huge this morning, up $95. And this is a lot to do with the geopolitical stuff that's going on and the weakness as well in the the US dollar. So the weaker US dollar obviously driving gold higher. And the weakness in that US dollar is all that Trump turmoil, trade turmoil. And even Trump's getting some pushback. I've seen it in the polls. Like people are starting to say they've had enough. So hopefully that'll be enough for him to rethink his his erratic behaviors. That's a nice way. I mean, is that a nice way of saying it? Erratic behavior.
It's a very generous way of saying it. But you know, the clock is counting down. And it's going to feel like it's happening very fast in the White House to the midterms. And as things stand,
exactly at
people,
midterms,
they don't care that the Democrats are in disarray. They don't care that the Democrats don't have anything to offer. The American people have a history of they just vote for the other party in the midterms. They almost always do it, and especially if the incumbent party is making a mess of things. So I think the Republicans will get absolutely massacred in the midterms as things stand.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to figure out how he needs to stop this erratic behavior and start to put some calmness back into people's lives if he expects to hang on to, you know, the House and the Senate as well in the midterms. So
also, certainly if he expects to have the Republican Party win the next presidential election as well, he's going to have to behave himself, isn't he?
So gold, you and I've been, ever since we started doing this, and a lot of people have asked, why do you do gold? We think gold is very important. And gold is definitely the canary in the gold mine, and gold is signaling exactly what it's supposed to do. Look at gold. Just take a look. That's a year chart there. Look at what gold's telling us, that the global situation is not very stable. Gold is your hedge against instability. So there you go.
Especially since Donald Trump was elected.
I've been a fan of gold since the first, what was that first Iraq war called?
The Gulf War.
The Gulf War. Didn't they call it Operation...
Desert Storm.
Operation Iraqi Liberation or something, that oil or something.
That was the second one, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Desert Storm was the first one in 1991.
That's when I first started buying gold, and that was around $250 an ounce at that time. In Canadian dollars today, 46.14. I didn't think I'd see that day. Look at that, 46.14 for a chunk of gold. Our Canadian government has zero reserves in gold. But guess what we do? Most of our reserves are in the USD. There you go. Crypto. The crypto space, This looks like it wants to go up. Like gold and crypto have been kind of like changing places for a bit here. And this is the year chart. Like gold had that big run up in the November election there. And then since then, it's kind of banged on the door at the $110,000 mark a couple of times, and then kind of fallen off, kind of filled that gap. This Lux stocks, which I would consider Bitcoin like a stock, it's tried to fill that gap, and it's kind of forming a base here for its next move. So watch Bitcoin, watch the Bitcoin. Canadian dollar. And this is not a Canadian story. This is an American story, really. Sorry. It's the US dollar weakening and most currencies improving. Excuse me. Wow.
You just can't stand it, can you? You can't stand to see the loonies, so
I'm just going to have a drink.
so much agony.
The joys of fighting a cold. There you go.
But this is still like, even though this is a little bit better, it's still dire, isn't it? When you look at the long-term chart, it's still not very good to be at 72.
Excuse me, I am really sorry. Yeah. The Canadian dollar at one point was above the US dollar, and we're a resource-based economy. And if we utilized our resources more, we would be at par or better. So there you go.
It's possible. It's still possible, isn't it, to do that?
There you go. In our AI and tech section, OpenAI ChatGPT releases 4.1. And it can handle up to 1 million tokens of context, meaning it can analyze and respond to far more text, images. I use it every day. It's crazy how good it's getting. It's actually crazy. And I know lots of people that I've shown it to, including you, that use it in their daily lives now all the time. My daughter uses it all the time. It's like, like she chats with it all the time. It's crazy how good it is.
Yeah, and I mean, considering that it's not like people aren't going to the internet to get their questions answered, but the people that don't use ChatGPT, it's just they're going to old-fashioned technology, which, they're going to Google, aren't they? And that's almost the equivalent of, I don't know, going to a horse and carriage when you could drive a car, when you could drive a self-drive Tesla.
Yeah. And this one's really cool. And we're going to play a little clip here. Because AI is learning how to speak to dolphins. Wouldn't that be cool? So and it makes sense in how smart these AI models are. But we're going to play this clip here.
Been waiting for this for 40 years.
Denise has the world's largest collection of dolphin vocalizations. I'm a research scientist at Google DeepMind. Dolphin Gemma is the first LLM trained to try to understand dolphin language.
Dolphin Gemma will input sounds.
Once a dolphin starts doing a vocalization like a whistle, it can try to complete the end of it.
When you're doing a Google search, right, it's finishing your sentence, right?
Dolphin Gemma has Denise's data and sort of encapsulates a lot of the knowledge and experience she has in it. But it's also small enough we can train it with more data as we get it. We can actually keep on fine-tuning the model as we go and hopefully get better and better understanding of what the dolphins are producing.
We do not know if animals have words. Dolphins can recognize themselves in the mirrors. They use tools, so they're smart, but language is still the last barrier. So feeding dolphin sounds into an AI model like Dolphin Gemma will give us a really good look at if there are patterns, subtleties that humans can't pick out.
If dolphins have language, then they probably also have culture.
You're going to understand what priorities they have. What do they talk about? The goal would be to someday speak dolphin, and we're really trying to crack code.
I think I can help out. Dolphin language is, can I eat that? Can I play with that? And what's going on? Dolphins seem to be very inquisitive creatures for sure.
Please don't harpoon me.
Please don't harpoon me. I think they're so curious, and I imagine with all their clicks and noises and whistling and stuff, like they obviously have a language there, and so AI may allow us to start speaking with animals, dogs as well. Dogs can be extremely intelligent.
Yeah, for sure. And there are lots of animals like that. I mean, elephants seem
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
emotional, don't they, at times?
And I think if you have an open mind, and that's where we got to get to in this world, is where we have an open mind. So like those boys on the golf course there, where they just want to fight every time somebody disagrees with each other. Less fighting and more like, oh my God, we could do that. And this show here, we try to actually help, like that you have something you learned from today too. Like what did you get out of this? And that's what we hope to impart some knowledge to and share. And then obviously we love your comments and your thoughts. And let's look at how AI. You talked about self-driving cars. Here's an example of AI self-driving and making sure that it didn't hurt that little deer. Watch this little clip here. There was the deer there, and it swerved around the deer, went right into the ditch there, and missed the deer. Better than most drivers would have done.
I think that's basically true in general, not just deer encounters, but I mean, just even in the basics, like when to apply the brakes. Like how many times do you come to a red light and you stop, and then you look in your rearview mirror and somebody's coming into your back at like 70 kilometers an hour, and then they have to like really slam the brakes down because they just weren't paying attention.
I use self-driving every day, and I've been doing it since May, so it's been a while now. So what is that? Yeah, so it's been a while. I think it's been April of last year, so almost a year I've been using it. And it gets better every day. Basically, I can push a button and say, these words, push button and say, take me home, and it drives me home, and I don't have to touch the wheel again. I can say, take me to work, and it drives me to work. Pretty bloody, and you've tried it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was completely astonished by the level that it's at. I was under the impression that it was still really sketchy and just like dumb, but it isn't. It isn't dumb anymore, is it? It can really do it with the odd, like, you obviously can't fall asleep. Well, it wouldn't let you do that anyway, but you shouldn't, even if you could. But you'll have to do the odd intervention now and then. But by and large, it's in the bag pretty much, isn't it? That technology, which is so crazy to even say that we live at a time where that's been achieved. But
and I have my own deer story, but mine was a raccoon, and it did the same thing. It avoided hitting the little rascally raccoon.
And what's good about that is it doesn't wear your brakes down. Because you don't have that kind of thing, do you? You don't have brake pads.
And we got some memes for you. These are all in fun, so don't lose your mind. These are just fun. There's the old gravy boat. And
I mean, I find it quite funny, the idea that Mark Carney could have any gravy that Xi Jinping would want. I think it's probably the other way around.
And then our next one, 3 prominent Americans have endorsed Mark Carney. And the reason this came out, like, what's his name? The singer there just came out with an endorsement. Another
Neil Young.
Neil Young.
What's his name? The greatest Canadian songwriter of all time.
Well, there you go.
But he doesn't spend much time in Canada, does he?
I'm a bigger fan of English music for sure. My favorite musicians. We've said this before. Beatles, Elton John, Mick and the Boys. That's my kind of deal. And then the last one here, and this one's against all the parties, I guess, this meme here. But homelessness is getting worse, but advocates says it's all but forgotten in the election. Yeah, because they don't really talk about it, right? They're all they're talking about is, it seems like sometimes, is Trump. We should be
everything. Absolutely, it's not just homelessness that's been sidelined. It's everything. Can you remember all the topics of conversation before Trump turned up and decided to wreck Canadian politics? It was quite a diverse priority.
Hopefully the debate isn't all about Trump. Like, hopefully they say, okay, here's 5 minutes to talk about Trump, and then that's it. Like, talk about something else, because like if that's it, we're not going to get anything other than like who's going to fearmonger more, because that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, and who's going to grandstand and try to look like the tough guy the most. I mean, the reality is that this election was destined to be about really one thing, and that was living standards, wasn't it? Cost of living, however you want to, whatever angle you want to.
We should run a pool if anybody wants to play. We can run a pool how many times the word Trump is used and who uses it the most. How's that? We should do a poll on Kelowna now and see who is.
Well, they're going to be directed by the debate moderators, aren't they? The moderators.
No, but I'm just like, whatever candidate uses the word Trump, how many times they use the word Trump in their whatever their rebuttals and their answers.
Yeah, but it is true that no matter what the question is, the answer can always be Trump, can't it?
Do you remember Justin Trudeau's pat answer for everything, no matter what he was asked?
And it was climate change.
No, we've been there for Canadians when Canadians needed us most, with $10 daycares that nobody got, $10 daycares and dental and all that stuff. And he would say the same thing, no matter the question. He would say that same answer, it seemed like.
Yeah.
Whereas
the conservatives are going to cut.
Again, we thank you for being here, and we'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We try to do about an hour. We're pretty close today. We're like a little hour and probably like 4 or 5 minutes, but we do thank you for watching. We ask that you share it and comment as much as you can, and try not to be the guys on the golf course. Try to be more understanding to different people's points of views. How's that?
Try and be more like the Dolphins and like the golf fighters.
Or if you're going to pick a fight, maybe go take some fighting lessons before you get your jaw busted. If you're going to be that guy.
That will assist you.
What's that?
It'll certainly help. If you're the kind of guy that gets into fights on golf courses, knowing how to fight.
Or making sure, here's the last piece of advice, making sure when you go out, that the group in front of you and the group behind you, you can beat up, because you don't want to be picking on any tough guys. Just say, no, not that group looks too tough. I don't want to go out against that group. Anyway, that's our show for today. We do thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.